Hey folks, we are back. We've got our Maschinen Krieger, all glossed. Might give it one more coat, actually, before we start the actual decaling, but it's looking good. It's looking very good. I just have the gun fitted here. We still have more work to do on the gun and the little other pod tank thing that goes over there before we put any decals to it. But it's, I like the way it's going. So we've got that, which we're going to set off to the side. I have 2 sheets of custom printed decals that I've just run off. This is clear, this is white background. If you remember from the P51A that I did recently, the reason we have many more on the clear sheet is because we might have to do compounding of them, you know, to get that good depth of color and opacity that we want. You usually don't have to worry about that with white. It just, you know, one decal does it for us. So I have this really cool, this is not mine, I created this patch, you know, for the squadron. This is the actual United States Space Force crest. This I found online. It's a kind of a political cartoon when they announced Space Force. I have it in different sizes. It's going to be kind of like nose art on the thing. So I'm not sure which size we're going to use, but we're going to use most of, if not all of these, as we go. So I have the Space Force, which is going to go along these booms here. Along the booms, I have the stars and bars that'll go around. I made a tail number for it, or whatever we're calling a tail. Instead of AF, Air Force, it's SF, Space Force. And I just assigned it some random numbers. Some radiation symbols, and, you know, it's as simple as that. So what I need to do is I need to cut these from the sheets to start with. Unfortunately, they fed in the printer a little bit crooked, but that's not a problem because all we need to do is I'm going to cut them off the papers nice and even using a clear ruler so I can see what I'm doing real well. And then we'll fix this down for when we do our gloss overcoat, you know, our lacquer to seal it all in, because I have an inkjet, not a laser printer. It'd be great if I had a laser printer, and we wouldn't have to do the top coat to seal it in, which would help keep the decals nice and thin. And we can return these sheets to the bags where they come from, and then we'll get going working with the decals. I have all of the custom markings that I printed, all the custom decals applied in all the places that I basically want them. I may put on a couple more here and there, depending, but I've got my squadron patch, I've got the little graphic I found online. I've got the Space Force patch, stars and bars and all that. So that's done. I've got the main markings on. Now it's time for stenciling and stuff like that. So I have the decals that came with the kit, and I'll put these on pretty much in accordance with the instructions, but I also have all sorts of other stencils and stuff in various scales that I picked out that I think are going to look good, just throughout the kit in various places. So I'll put them on as I go. I may put more on from my little spare decal sets and stuff as I go, but I figure, something that's going to operate in space is going to have lots of markings, lots of access panels, lots of warnings, lots of stuff all over the place. So this is going to be a relatively busy, marked kind of thing. So I also have to work on the gun. I figure there's going to be all sorts of markings and warnings and instructions all over this thing too. But I probably not yet, because I gotta do some more painting and everything on the gun, on its little pod and everything. But first step is to get the stenciling thrown down all over this ship. So I'm gonna work on that, and then you'll see that when it's all finished. This is what it looks like after my custom decals and the kit decals. The stenciling and stuff on is pretty good. I'm happy, but I want more. I definitely want more. So the kit decals, some of them, being a little old, cracked up and fell apart here. There are a couple other places but they managed to come together, back together pretty well. And I'm really enjoying the way this is going. So now I'm going to start putting all the other decals that I managed to scrounge up on there. What I found that I really liked, I found this little Lockheed Fort Worth company. I'm going to put that on there. I think that would look cool. Kind of like Lockheed putting their little brand mark somewhere on it. I'm not sure where to put it right now, but I'm definitely going to throw that out, like as if a real company had built this. And now I'm going to go back into my work mode, and you'll see it again with more. After lots of detail work, I feel like I'm at a point where I'm all decaled out. Lots of markings all over this thing, and you'll notice not a lot on the bottom. I just didn't put a lot on the bottom, but stenciling all over the place from various different sets. Some of them still need a little bit of softener and solvent to help it, reduce some silvering and stuff. But the ones that came with the kit, I put where the kit said to put them, and all the others, I just sort of found my way to where I thought they were going to go. This came from an old monogram tank. A lot of them came from 148 scale aircraft. I had some stenciling from a 132 scale F-15, which worked out great. I'm not sure where I got the slime lights for. I think they're 148 F4 low voltage lighting. One little screw up I didn't take into account. I put these ones on the back and they cross a panel line, so I'll have to make sure that I don't give any kind of panel line wash in there. But other than that, I think it looks pretty good. It's a kind of a busy look to the whole thing, as a space fighter I think would be. Now, is this thing going to work in the atmosphere too? Why not? Because the original plan was to put it on its base, which was going to look like some kind of land somewhere. Oh, by the way, I got the Lockheed Fort Worth company on there, and I love the way it's subtle, but it's right there in bright yellow. So we've got that on. We got to figure out how we're going to remount the thing. I think I've got it on the two wood rounds, and I'm just going to mount it. So I've got just a little bit more work now to do, softening up the decals, getting them to conform to everything, giving it one more gloss coat to seal the decals in, and then we're going to get ready for washes and panel lines and all sorts of stuff like that. But overall, I'm thrilled with the way this is turning out. It sat for so long not being worked on, and then I just got the idea of where I wanted it to go and what I wanted it to do. That happens with me with a lot of projects. I don't know. I'm sure it happens with a lot of modelers. You're very into something, and then something else catches your eye, and you start working on it, and something gets forgotten. And when you're doing what-if modeling, for me anyway, that happens a lot. As you sit and you try to figure out what's my next step with what this is going to be. and it can sit for a while as you try to figure it out. After our first panel line wash and little wipe away with the Q-tip, I think it's coming along pretty good, once again. I used the Q-tip to give us some streaks along what would be, now this is where when you're doing what ifs it gets a little complicated, so along what would be airflow. If this is in space, would there be any streaks along with airflow? So I'm saying, you know, you walk this fine line when you do what ifs with reality versus what if. Some might argue that in the vacuum of space there would be no streaks, nothing like that, because there is no air. There's nothing there. So sometimes you have to balance look for effect with reality of what you're doing. You know, and that's where doing what if modeling can get kind of complicated. So understanding that if this is flying in space, there would be absolutely no streaks, there would be no airflow, there would be nothing at all, no aerodynamics really, which is why something like this could actually, in the sci-fi world, anything could fly. But you know, we're just playing with the idea that this is an actual something, right? I decided, though, in the backstory in my mind, and I talk about this often with modeling, you know, you gotta give your project a backstory in your mind. If it's a real historical subject, that's awesome, it has the backstory. When you're doing a what if, you don't have to, but I do. You give it a backstory so that when you're doing your detailing and your finishing, you know, that's how you know what to do. So this can fly in space. It can also fly in an atmosphere. So that's why, just because I want as much detail on this as I can. I want it to look like it's got use behind it. So it does fly in an atmosphere sometimes. So that's why, that's my excuse for doing panel line streaks and such, because I want it to look, you know, as used up as I can. So I'm going to move on to some specific streak spots along the fuselage now. I'm also going to do some more, we've got some of the bright, shiny metal stuff that I think I want to tone down with maybe some dirty washes there too. And definitely some more work on the engine. So there's more to come, but I just wanted to pause at this point to talk about why I made sort of the stylistic choices I did, just regarding, you stay in there, you're not coming out, just regarding, the scientific, if this was in space, versus the, what is the realism of the effect we're going for here. It's something to take into account. we are coming down to the final stages here of our little love bug. Of course, you know, that Winsor & Newton matte is a great matte coat. I love it. And it has just given every single one of our decals a real painted on look. It's sealed in all of our exhaust markings and everything. It's done real well for us here. Now we've got our weapons to affix. By the way, we've got our little light lenses there. That look pretty good. Let's see. Now I think these, honestly, to tell you the truth, I don't have the instructions here in front of me, so I don't remember. Okay, yeah, this goes like this. I think really, like, just friction will hold these things in. I have broken this off more times than I can count, so it's super glued on at a really weird angle at this point. And there's not much I can do about that, unfortunately. So if you're building one of these, just beware. You've got to be careful about those. They will stick out and bang into everything and anything that comes near them. Now, I am having a little bit of trouble getting this. There we go. Is that going to want a little bit of glue? That is going to want a little bit of glue. Okay. We're at the point now where everything's so finished, and this is the point where I ruin models, where we are like at our 95% completion, and this is where I destroy work that's already been done. So I just want to be real careful about how I interact with everything I touch. But I'm just going to give this a little glue here, little CA glue, and that will hold nicely over there. And now for our gun. You know what, we'll give that a little bit of glue also. Give that a little bit of glue also right there. With the introduction of the gun, we have kind of an operable weapon system. Look at that. So as a model, this thing is basically, it's finished. It's all done, and it looks cool, and I like it a lot, and it could just sit right there on the ground. But I've been working on this base, and now that we've introduced it to, you know, Space Fighter, we could still do a whole working ground for the base. I think what I might rather do here, though, is just give this just a black coating, you know. And we have to do some adjusting of this acrylic rod, because it was never meant to be just sitting here like this. Although this is a good view, because from one side you get to see, well, you can't see it at this camera angle, but you will when it's all done. From one side, you get to see all the intricate work that goes into the bottom, and from the other side, you get to see, you know, the top. You can flip open the canopy and see the pilot and all that. So this actually is a kind of a cool angle to position it, but I want to give it a little bit more life than that. So what I want to do is heat up the rod so we can bend it a little bit and kind of give it a little bit more than just this. This would work, though. This would work. If I was going to have it just positioned like this on the base, I would actually shorten the rod up. And we still might shorten the rod up, depending. This is just the overhead angle right here. I know is not great where I have it for looking at what we've got right here. But first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm just going to give this an overall either black or maybe even a metallic base coat, just to make it look Space Forcey. Okay, so I'm going to do that outside with just a rattle can, and then I'll be back. Little while later, after I've got this, I tried to go with the metal, and I gave it a heavy coating of its primer and spray paint in one. You can use anything you want for this. This is just, you know, I don't even think it's important to show you the brand or color or anything, because this is like your choice. But I did it a little heavier than you should normally out of a spray can, because I wanted it to end up being thick, and it kind of looks like a weird pyrite metal color. It's still wood. It's obviously wood. You can see the grain in there. which, you know, I'm not concerned about. I could later on give it a coating of clear polyurethane, and that would look cool, but I just really like the look of it the way it is now. So we've got that. Now I used something as simple as a hair dryer to heat this up and just put a simple little curve in it, because I still want it to have a little bit of an angle on it. I don't want it to be horizontal, because I do like that you can take a look at the underside and everything. But I think it came out very easily, you know. Now if I had used an actual heat gun, the reason I used a hair dryer was because I wanted to have a lot of control over bending this. If you use something like an actual heat gun, there's a lot of chance you could actually warp it, melt it, burn it, end up clouding it up and everything. So I took a method that made it a little bit more work to put the bend in it than I wanted, but also preserve the clearness of the acrylic rod. So to anchor this in to the wood, it's never going to come out of the wood. It's going to stay there. So I'm going to use something like this. Now, you know, CA glue typically doesn't work really great on wood because it's very porous. So we're going to use something that's going to give it a really good bond inside there. And you're not going to want to put a lot of glue because you don't want it to creep up on the outside, you know, and mar up the finish we got. So, I haven't used this in a while. Let me just make sure it's not like plugged up or anything. Just a little bit on the edges there, and then down in the bottom. Because we're not going to need a whole, oopsie, and I did that. I don't want to. And lock that in. Make sure it's in there really good. Okay. And I want this to be glued in solid, but I want the option to take it off again later. So I'm actually going to use some canopy glue or PVA glue. This is basically just PVA glue. It's nothing special, but when it dries, it's going to be pretty solid, you know. So we'll use that on the inside of the little hole we made for this. And that will work pretty well to hold it in place. Just slide that down. Now I need to line up the rod and the ship to make sure that everything is straight and even before glue starts drying. We got just a little bit of a turn in it. That is right where I want it. Okay. And I'm going to move the camera so you can actually see the forward angle of it when it's all done. So we're going to be handheld, and you get to see a very messy workspace for the last final reveal of this. But we've got our base, we've got it mounted. I'm just going to try to be gentle so that the glue can dry, but you can see how we've changed. Just a nice little curve. So it's not so severely pointing down, but you can see all the markings. If we come around to the rear, you get an opportunity to take a look at everything going on underneath, right? But it still shows all the detail above very, very nicely. All the custom markings came out beautifully. All the decals just look perfectly painted on. It took me a long time to finish this, you know, because it had just been sitting for, I mean, almost a year until I decided to finish it. But I'm so super happy with the results. We still have our pilot sitting in there. We can display all the work that was done on the gun. A lot of the detail on this, you have to get in and really look for it, which is okay because this is going to be a nice display piece. Now I might go so far as to make a little plaque or something that describes it on this base. I really like the way that the heavy paint though kind of turns the wood and the bark into, like I said, some kind of mineral looking, into almost a pyrite kind of looking finish. I think this overall met my expectations for what I wanted as I was coming up with the design. I love that we still have the little Lockheed Fort Worth company over there. I really, really like this. Now, I'm not sure if I'm going to keep this one or if I'm going to sell this one or what I'm going to do with it, because it does take up quite a bit of shelf space. It really does. And as you can see, I don't have a whole lot of shelf space right here. I need more shelf space. But this is finally a completed work, ready for something. I don't know for what, but for something. Some of the details of, looking at it. So I assumed that these little guys over here were kind of like thrusters for, maneuvering either in or out of the atmosphere. But, if it's going to be a Space Force kind of aircraft, we're saying you can do both. That's why I put kind of that soot burn marking around there. If you were wondering what that was during the weathering portions, I could go and follow up, put some more kind of soot staining around the gun barrels, but I'm happy with the way they came out, the way they look. If I had any 1/20th scale resources, I was thinking about actually creating some missile rails and putting some missiles on this somewhere, but I think the model is fine the way it is. It's pretty good. It is such an odd scale, at 1/20th, but it was fun to work on. It's such a different thing, and like I said earlier, I loved identifying different parts that go into this that make it what it is. I'm sure that this is automobile related. Like I said, these main parts being from, I'm pretty sure, a 1/32nd scale P-38 Lightning. We have our 1/72 scale aircraft parts on here, little tiny tank treads. It's a real fun kit to put together. And then, obviously made out of parts from other stuff. It's interesting idea from Hasegawa on how this all came about. I appreciate you guys sticking with this build with me, and I am anxiously awaiting comments, criticisms, concerns, ideas that you maybe have thinking about what went into this one. Different ways we could have finished it, or different ideas that we could incorporate into it. All ideas are welcome here. So I did take a pretty simple approach at finishing the base, but I think it holds up for what we're doing, So thanks guys, as always. I've got more stuff. I've got projects in the works everywhere. I'm going to take some time to clean up my workspace, but always excited when a project is finished and ready for display. I think I've said this before, but if there's a particular project or subject you'd like to see, let me know. I'm going to continue. I have so many things that I have so many ideas and so many projects that I have stocked up on now. So I will see you all again soon, and everybody out there that's building your own, keep building them and build them well.